1790s, some of the earliest Genevans were African American, both freemen and enslaved. Slavery was legal in New York State until 1827. In 1803, Robert Rose moved from Virginia to Rose Hill, across Seneca Lake from Geneva, with his family and 37 enslaved people. The crops in New York required less labor, and he freed 28 people between 1810 and 1820. Owners often freed their enslaved workers for financial, not humanitarian reasons. With increased immigration to America, cheaper labor was available. After freedom, some former slaves stayed in the area. William Kenny's father, John, was probably owned by Robert Rose. There are still Kennys in Geneva today. Free African Americans bought land in Geneva as early as the 1820s. By the 1850s, there were families on High and West Streets, which was the western edge of town. Residents included Samuel Jackson, his wife, and Minnie Condell. There were families on other streets as well. The Gatons lived on Catherine Street, which is now West Avenue. John Prue owned a home on Main Street near Castle Creek, and Dr. Merriweather lived on Castle Street. Doctor was his given name, not a title. Protestant churches offered separate Sunday schools and services for African Americans. In 1834, many people left those churches and built a Union Chapel on High Street. A later chapel was built on the corner of High and Grove Streets, which is now a vacant lot, and it was used until the 1930s. The Grove Street Chapel was included in the center of a mural by Kenneth Millington on the side of 93 Castle Street. Beginning in 1837, African American children from all parts of town were taught in the Union Chapel. Henry Highland Garnett, a famous minister and abolitionist, taught at the school and preached from 1849 to 1851. He pressured Geneva to build a proper school on High Street and to desegregate the schools. In 1853, the school district finally built this school across from the chapel. In 1873, Geneva was forced to desegregate its schools and let children attend the school closest to them. After the Civil War ended in 1865, many African Americans moved north. A number of single men, like Wesley Robinson, came from the South and married women in Geneva. He married the widow Harriet Gillum. In the 1800s and part of the 1900s, African Americans were limited to service jobs. Photos from the 1870s show people as cleaners or carriage drivers. Herman Kenny was a drayman, or wagon driver, who moved freight around town. Hobart College students met Herman on their first trip to college when he picked up their trunks. There were African American farmers outside of town. Minor Lindsay Sr. bought land on Reed Street in the early 1900s and worked a farm with his son. Minor Jr. married Victoria Northup, great-granddaughter of Solomon Northup, who wrote the book 12 Years a Slave. Art Kenny, on the right, shined shoes and blocked and cleaned hats as his main business. He often worked other jobs in a day, opening bank buildings, serving punch at Hobart and William Smith parties, acting as a pallbearer, and closing buildings at the end of the day. His shop was popular with men from town and Hobart. When the U.S. entered World War II, Art began an album signed by men as they left for service. He marked those who died in action with a gold star and a short memorial. Henry MacDonald was born in Haiti but raised in Rochester and Canandaigua. In 1911, he was among the first professional African American football players and played Negro League baseball for the Pittsburgh Colored All-Stars and the Cuban Giants. Like Art Kenny, Henry worked a number of jobs, including as an athletic trainer and janitor at Hobart. He was a volunteer football coach at DeSales High School in the late 1930s. Later in life, he was well known as a Little League umpire. Robert Lindsay joined the Army in the late 1920s. In 1942, he joined the 761st Tank Battalion, a segregated unit. For 2 years, the 761st served as a stateside practice squad for white tank units. In October 1944, the 761st landed in Europe and was at the front line in the Battle of the Bulge and other offensives. They were in action for 183 days. Like many African American units, their service was overlooked. The 761st received a unit citation from President Carter in 1976. Geneva's African American community grew after World War II. Migrant workers from the South came for farm work, then began settling here for permanent jobs. New residents formed new churches, like Mount Olive Baptist Church. Geneva has celebrated Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday since 1971. Since the 1990s, the Martin Luther King Jr. Committee has awarded college scholarships to local students. These were the 2008 winners. The African American Men's Association of Geneva raises money for scholarships and mentoring and life skills programs. John Cromartie presented India Tyler with her 2019 scholarship. African Americans are underrepresented in the Geneva Historical Society's collection. Facebook has helped identify people in photos like Connie and Yolanda Bennett when they graduated from Geneva High School in 1978. Facebook users identified this couple as Joe and Katie Ford at the 1968 opening of the new National Bank of Geneva. Joe was a bank courier for many years. Some stories of achievement have been collected. In 2015, Mark Gramling was the first African American elected official in Geneva. Tyrone Henderson is an accomplished actor who brings the Playwrights of Color Summit to the city each summer. There are many more stories to collect. If you have photos, stories, or objects to share about Geneva's African American community, we want to hear from you.